rolling. But the reality is, like Sister Angie said, nothing belongs to us, not even our lives. And we see when we read earlier, and anybody who didn't read this needs to go back and read the beginning of Job, because it is from the throne where this decree is allowed and permitted. God tells Satan, you do your worst to Job. Go for it. Whatever you want to do, only his life is spared. Go after his kids. Go after his servants. Go after his camels. Go after all of that. They were not off limits. Hearing that, do you think less of God? Is your mindset spinning? Do we know better than God? Cannot the Lord God raise the dead? Now, my sister Nettie, she says, but it was counted to him, meaning Job, to be a goodly man. He was. This wasn't happening because of Job's sin. Sister Nettie, this whole story has nothing to do with Job. And not in terms of something he did that warranted or brought this on. This was a battle, basically, as I said before. This was a battle between God and Satan, and Job was the arena where it was taking place. That's all this was. And in the end, Job is even going to be rewarded doubly for him being the subject matter that these things were going to take place. And God would turn this into making Job an even more faithful man in terms of his understanding of who his God is and how he works. He was being elevated and didn't really know it, but this was his valley. This was his valley, and God took him into that valley. But it is inevitable, as we're going to read as we continue, that he's going to be lifted up to the mountaintop when it's all said and done. Man of God, God's word. Go ahead, brother.
Oh, I was just going to comment there where you were talking. Sorry, I kind of got lost back on what, but you were speaking about the. I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's all right.
The firstborn, the death. Yes. Now I got. Sorry, I was reading ahead. I was thinking there's a connection there of why God chose death as the last one that he brought upon him. And it's interesting there, and that Job lost what would have been his firstborn, which can tie into, he took Pharaoh's firstborn, and Pharaoh was stiff-necked and hard-hearted, and, he let the vengeance come and he kept chasing his people. And it also goes back to the firstborn. Like, you see all kinds of connections dating back all the way to the faith of Abraham and what he was told, the loss of his firstborn, he's going to sacrifice him. It all kind of connects together. I was just going to comment that it all weaves together there if you actually read all the other stuff.
Yep. I mean, it's really interesting too, because I think it is significant too that this happens at the oldest brother's house, the eldest brother's house. And for me, it is hard for me to not see something in that. But, for me to kind of attribute things to it would be, I'm afraid I'd be stretching things a little bit. But I think that there's something in this about that we can relate to Christ about. When you talk about here that the eldest brother's house, it talks about the wilderness and the smiting the four corners and so there's lots of things that we can probably make allusions to. But like I said, I don't want to get too extravagant and that kind of thing because it's not going to be beneficial, I don't think. But there can be a lot here, and if you read a lot of different commentators and expositors, you will find people, getting really flowery with the trying to assign things to this. And I like to be careful about that unless there's something that is really immediate that can be perceived. Brother Jeffrey, encouraging servant, go ahead.
about how God told the devil, as far as afflicting Job is concerned, go for it. Go for it.
Yep.
Do it. This question may seem irrelevant, but it did occur to me. Do you think it ever occurred to the devil that he was getting set up by God?
I don't think so.
Because if my mortal enemy, God and the devil, enemies of each other, my enemy is telling me, yeah, go for it. Do it. Do it. Oh, wait a minute here. He's encouraging me to do something that may not wind up making me look good when it's all said and done.
Right.
But I mean, I've often wondered about that. That's all.
That's interesting, and it's interesting to me. I mean, but the thing is, you think about it, but here we see it today, right? We see it today. It's like you can talk to your blue in the face to somebody who's outside of Christ, and they just don't get it. Unless God is bringing them to salvation, unless he's bringing them to faith in that very moment, they don't get it. No matter, see, you know, when you look at the sky, when you look at the beach, the ocean, when you look at these forests, when you look at creation itself, when you look at when you look at the human anatomy, when you see your child born, the first child born for the first time, these things, this is just the tiniest fragment of what it means to be able to see God. And people don't see it. I think that Satan's, because we all know he is a being that is ultimately and massively depraved. And we know that he is full of pride, full of carnal ambition. And he also knows that from his standpoint, his time is short. He knows this. But the idea, like the reason why I say, Jeff, that no, I don't think he does, is because when he goes before God, what does he say to him? He says, the only reason while Job is faithful to you, God, the only reason he's faithful to you is because you give him everything. And Job is implying that Satan is implying to God's face that he, meaning Satan, knows something that obviously God can't see. That's what he's thinking. Right. Because that's what he says. The only reason why Job is faithful is because you give him all these things, and then you make it so that he can enjoy it and that he has all these comforts. And so, and he says, but if you take that away, he's going to curse you to your face.
In other words, Jonathan, you're saying that the devil is blinded by his own hatred of God and Job.
I would take it a step further. I think what you said is 100% correct. Somebody said this the other day, so I won't take credit for it. And I can't remember who said it, but they said he's blinded by his own blindness. And I love that. I don't know who said it, but he's blinded by his own blindness. He's deceived by his own deceptions. It's crazy. Sister Lisa, go ahead.
So as I'm looking at this, and we go back and we have is it Sabaeans? I don't know if you say that. We have them attacking. Then we have, the fire from heaven attacking.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Chaldeans in 3 separate attacks.
Right.
And then the very next thing, I just found it interesting, and I don't know if I'm looking at this all wrong or why I can't see this, is that the sons and daughters were eating and drinking as normal.
Right.
And I mean, Job's world is falling apart. I mean, and it seems as though they are oblivious to what is going on around them. Have they been blinded that they continue in their ways so that, the will of God be done here, or Satan's plan be done? I mean, did the enemy close their eyes and ears to the havoc that was going on around them, that they would be, it almost seems as though they're celebrating, drinking wine and bam, and then the house falls on him, you know.
You know, I got to tell you something. That is a tremendous insight. Tremendous. That's an impressive insight. And honestly, one I hadn't considered.
Oh, well, I mean, if you, because it just came to me like, why is
Yeah.
it just, it's like another day to the
Yep.
sons and daughters while the whole life of Job is coming down.
No, it is a very insightful observation. Extremely. Very impressive. Because I hadn't thought about that. And my only answer to it, because I would really have to give this some serious thought. But what I will say is this: what Job was going through was intended to be expeditious. It was intended. It was not intended. It was intended to not give him any opportunity to recoil in any way. So I do believe that number one, his afflictions were very supernatural from beginning to end. Meaning that the flow and the pattern and the speed with which these things were taking place to him, this was not something that we would attribute with the normal course of people being afflicted. This was different. And I think that because it was happening so rapidly, this was consistent with Satan's plot to really get there fast and to really not to keep Job on his heels. He doesn't have a chance to do anything. Now, the thing that I find astounding about what you observed is how is it that they were still eating and drinking and didn't know all that had happened? And I have to say, I'm stumped. I'm stumped on that one.
Well, I'm stumped, and I'm glad you're stumped because
I'm stumped. I'm stumped on that one. That is a good one. And at the outset, I can say, that I don't know if we get an answer on that. But because the only thing I would think about is that maybe they lived further away. I don't know. And they didn't know. It's hard to tell. But that is an impressive observation. I have to say that has got me thinking. Good one. And I'm sorry I don't have an answer, but sometimes that's just the way it is. But great one. At least I would keep that one right. Put that in your notes in your Bible. Man of God, go ahead, brother.
I have an answer.
Let me hear it. I want to hear this one. That's a good question.
It may not be correct, but I have an answer.
All right.
Well, first of all, I want to say that, my brother Jeffrey, and I don't mean to be contentious here. I'm just having different slants on the same thing. Satan is not God's enemy because he doesn't qualify. God is Satan's enemy because he hates him. But he's no more an enemy of God than the Palestinians are to the United States Army. Mm-hmm. In other words, you could say they're the enemy. We use that term when we're discussing strategy, but they aren't. Right. They're seriously an enemy. We could beat them in a day. But, and it really doesn't matter. But I'm not trying to split hairs or anything. I'm just saying that he is so insignificant compared to God that God.
He's a flea.
Yeah, he's a flea. Yeah. He's even less than a flea. He's a bacteria on a flea. Mm-hmm. But anyway, my thought about what Lisa said is this is my idea. First of all, we assume eating and drinking means celebrating. Mm-hmm. We eat and drink when we eat for a meal. Right. And the thing is, they drank wine. That was a matter of course. The water, I've gone into why, when Baptists tell me that they don't drink wine, I'm saying you're crazy because sometimes the water wasn't fit to drink. Right. And you couldn't keep grape juice probably longer than 2 or 3 days in the summer. That's right. That's why they had vinegar, because that was easy to make. Mm-hmm. But anyway, my thought is that, this happened so fast. Mm-hmm. They did this on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And I think they just gathered to eat as they always did. And, I'm not arguing with Lisa or saying anybody's wrong. I'm just saying that's my idea that they were eating and drinking as normal. Mm-hmm. And, it almost, the thing about, the four corners of the house, the only way you could hit all four corners of the house is only two ways. First of all, a hurricane's going to go one way, and there wouldn't be any hurricanes in the desert. It's got to either be a tornado that hit it all at once, right dead center, or as we talk about the four winds of the earth coming in at once, and that has to do with power and supernatural. We take out all four corners of the house at once. But anyway, that's just my thought.
No, it's interesting.
And Lisa just asked how they continue as normal. I'm saying things happen so fast, they might not have known this when they gathered together.
Well, that's my assessment too, because I think that Job's affliction, we definitely know, was of supernatural import. This wasn't like a normal, progressive. If we fall into trouble financially, let's say, like he did in a moment, usually it takes time. It's not something that just happens. They don't come, put liens on your houses, take your house, take your cars, take your clothes, take your kids. These things don't all happen at once. And this is what was happening with Job. So I think that the best answer that I have is that, like you said, brother, that this all happened, like this is all happening almost simultaneously. It's all happening at one time. It's successive, but it is happening in rapid succession. And I don't mean like in days. It's almost like it's happening in the same day. It feels like that, but it happened so fast that, and I think that, and I do think that the question that Lisa asked, the answer to it could be the proof. The fact that they were sitting at the house eating, like you said, Brother Jeff, this was a normal thing to do. It was. That's why it's kind of strange that they haven't been aroused by the first three calamities that have already taken place. They knew nothing about it because to them, it's business as usual. So to me, it definitely speaks to the rapidity with which these things, have taken place. But it is a very, it's a profound observation. It really is. It's a good one because you're right. And it could have been distance, but either way, we know from what the passage is telling us that these events happen in rapid succession. That part is something that we are definitely clear about. But again, that's very interesting. Sister Mariah and then Angie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like you said, it sounds like in one day. And I mean, he had so many, it says great possession than all the other men in the land. So he must have had a lot of land.
Right.
Because and all his flock and all of these things are separate, that you don't have the goats or the sheep with the oxen and the camels with them as well. So it appears that they are separate. They're separate today in society and our farmlands and things of that nature. So I'm thinking all based off of that. And then the children, it says that they gathered at the eldest brother's house. So it must have been further than what it was. So if one is taking one side, the Sabaeans are taking that, and the Chaldeans are over here taking this, it says as one was speaking over the next, and it doesn't tell us that it was one day from the next. So that's just my take on it, that, it was as a normal day for all of them. Yeah. And then calamity came, and like, what does it say? Like a woman in travail? Yes. It happened all of a sudden. Yeah.
And I think you're right about that. And Lisa, I would look at verses 4 and 5 again if I were you, as I'm going to do when this is over, because this is really interesting to me, because it says in verse 5 that it was so when the days of their feasting, meaning the children, when they were it says when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. So, and it says, for it may be that Job's sons may have sinned. And so you get the picture here that when Job offered the sacrifices for them, that he wasn't with them when he did it. And we also understand, and that's what I would be looking at. we also understand that each of the sons, they each had their own homes. And so they would, the kids, the children would go from one house to each other's house every day of the week. They would go from one house to the other. And so, and I think that there's a lot there that we can talk about in terms of their gathering together and whatever. But I think that that's something worth looking into, and I think it's very interesting. But it does show the severity and the swiftness in these calamitous events that are taking place to Job. His children, certainly the heaviest blow of all thus far, for sure. Sister Angie, go ahead. You kind of break it up a little bit, sister. I hear you now. Go ahead. Go ahead. Right.
That it's like he was
Yep,
getting
I
hit
hear
with
you.
the flood. And so when Lisa was talking about them all going about normal, it just brought me back to when that happened in the flood. It just everybody was doing their normal thing. Nobody was heeding the warning. Of course, this was, like you said, a battle between God and Satan. But do you see? I just see that part in that, and it's just so profound of Lisa saying those things. But then also going to Job, where he was thinking that his children were sinning because they were going house to house to house every day of the week, going and partying together. And so he thinks they might have sinned, so he did the sacrifice to them. I don't know. It just, maybe that's just something that I'm just seeing in this, but I just think it's absolutely beautiful of Lisa bringing up that observation of showing how all these things happening all at once. It's just, he just got hit hard. And that last one that he did with his children, Satan went straight to his heart.
Right.
He went to the love of his children. And that's something that, and Lisa says in the comments, which I really agree, because I've actually had a friend that went through this, and he was mad at God when his daughter died. And it was an accident, but same thing. That would cause someone to want to curse God. But look at how Job did not handle it that way. He just still didn't do it. Even though all those things were happening to him, he hasn't. But I've seen a person curse God because of that same situation. So I just think that was just a great observation too. I just want to say.
Amen, sister. Appreciate that. Good insight. Sister Meg, you want to add anything? I know you got in here a few minutes ago. You want to add something?
The Chaldeans, are we on that in 17?
Sure.
So the Chaldeans, it's very interesting because in Habakkuk chapter 1 verse 6, it says, "For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that are bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to pose the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses are also swifter than the leopards and more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from the far. They shall fly as the eagle that hastes to eat." So those are the Chaldeans, made out of 3 bands and fell upon camels. God judged them later when we see them here in this book. They were judged in Habakkuk. It's kind of,
Pardon me?
it's kind of interesting because these are the Chaldeans that were sent, and they were judged in the book of Habakkuk.
Right. Yeah, well, Chaldeans have always been sort of a thorn, like so many nations had been, but they were a prominent one because they were a very aggressive group and very strategic and very cunning. Brother Jeff, man of God, go ahead.
Well, you ain't whistling Dixie. I'm telling you, because Babylon comes from Babel, where Nimrod built the tower.
Yeah.
I mean, Nimrod was the greatest hunter of his time, and he was the king, and he supervised the construction of the Tower of Babel, and that caused the dispersion and of both peoples and tongues all over all over the world. And so they have been probably the most aggressive in all history and unchanged. I mean, yeah, the Chaldeans that Habakkuk is talking about, the Babylonians that basically destroyed Israel.
Right.
And but that here they are. Here's our first in. If this book was written first, here's their first appearance.
Right.
And it's like I probably mentioned this before. It's really interesting to me that Abraham was a Chaldean. It may be why his servants were so good at fighting.
Right.
And because he came from Ur of the Chaldees.
Of the Chaldees, yeah. He was. I mean, you remember when he went to go rescue Lot, he was very strategic as well.
I know, and he beat all those kings, and I'm telling you, these aren't just guys with a butler and a cook and all this kind of stuff. These guys knew how to fight.
That's right. No, they were warriors, and he wouldn't, he would, even though he would be outnumbered, he still had enough warriors to put up a bigger fight. But he was very different because he was very strategic at warfare. Abraham was, and he says, "No, I'm going to only send 300,
right? And
we're going to go take care of business." But that's another story to talk about. But yeah, you're right. So this was definitely, these things were definitely to make sure that these strokes that Satan was applying to Job were not only going to be swift, but they were going to be decisive. Swift and decisive. And so, and that's exactly what they were. Brother Jeff, encouraging servant, go ahead.
Well, Jonathan, I don't know about you and everybody else in the panel tonight, but so far we've learned as much or more about the tactics of our enemy, the devil, as we've learned about Job's responses to what he did in response to those attacks.
Right.
So I think it's interesting that we're kind of learning here on both ends, both as the perpetrator of these things and the victim of these things. God, of course, is overseeing the whole thing.
Right.
So my hat off to you, brother. You've done a really good job of having us think about this, because this has really made me think a lot about, or rethink what I've known about the story of Job. Thank you, brother.
No problem, brother. And I hope we can continue to do that. And again, this is an iron sharpened iron type situation. Go ahead, Meg.
So the other thing that's really interesting, when we were talking about witnesses in times, right?
It's hard to hear you, sister.
Can you hear me now?
Well, go ahead and try it, because it was going in and out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So another thing that's really interesting in these verses is not only did Job have calamity, but there was only one witness. And I think this is the sovereignty of God too, because for one witness to escape every single time and come back and tell Job, the calamity would have been there for him to see or to eventually, discover. But there was one witness, and that came out of every single time to witness to the fact of what happened. So I think that's very interesting, and God preserving at least one every single time to come and witness to Job, because witnesses are very important in Scripture.
And what do you think the significance was?
The significance is because I think it has to do with God's sovereignty.
Meaning,
in preserving one person to go and witness to Job.
I see that. Yeah, I see that. That's definitely no coincidence. That was definitely ordered and structured. And I think that, and anybody can disagree, but I think that this was also very much intentional to make Job get to the point where in Satan's mind, he would curse God sooner than later. go back and tell him how significant the devastation is. And it's almost like another dagger. So like when everything happens, having somebody come and tell him this is just, it's hard for us as believers to not look at these things that we read in the Bible. It's hard for us to look at these things in the Bible, and put ourselves in that state. We live in a day where it's the end of the world if you get canceled in any kind of capacity. When I lost my last account, I thought it was the end of the world that day. It was like, I don't want to do this all over again. But this is how we think today. Somebody asked the question, I think it was Sister Nettie who asked the question yesterday. Can you see this kind of thing happening in 2025? And I think the context was how people deal with it, but I'm not really sure what it was. But absolutely. But what Job experienced was otherworldly. Literally. It was otherworldly. This was something that was very, very different. It was significant. And this was something that, again, Job himself knew nothing about. And one of the takeaways that we are to get out of this is that when we have afflictions as believers, we need to understand what we have already been informed about with respect to Job. That whatever is happening to us has been ordered to happen to us by God. Believers understand this. They understand the afflictions that God sends, that they fall from God's hands. And so when we read in Isaiah 45:7, I believe it is, when God says, I create evil, this is what he's talking about. This stuff, these calamities, these catastrophes, this is what he's talking about. That this is all by his orchestration and by his design. Not necessarily by his hand, but definitely by his design. And so he takes all these things and he overrides all things, including the wickedness of man, including the wickedness of Satan and his hordes. We can never miss out on understanding this. God gave Satan permission to do it. So all these things you see happening here in this chapter to Job at the hand of Satan, God sanctioned it. He literally sanctioned it. You can't tell this to Christians today. And when you do, they'll make this sound like it's something different or that it doesn't mean what it is, or they'll be asking the question like somebody asked a couple of days ago, is this history or is it just poetic, poetry talk? Brother Jeff, go ahead, man of God.
Well, it's just like what Joseph said in Genesis, to his brothers, you meant this for evil, but it turned out to be good. What happened to him? And the thing is, that's what we have to step back as Christians. The unbelievers can't grasp it because they're so limited in their scope. Mm-hmm. Their notions of good and bad are distorted. And, the thing is, as believers, what we say is, and again, I use my own self as an example. Let me tell you something. It's one thing to be in an office seeing patients. The next thing, you're sitting in a prison cell. Yep. And let me tell you, I passed, but it was only by the grace of God because I was given things, support things, even while I was there. But I think he meant it for good because right now I feel like I'm more free. I'd be still working if that hadn't happened. I'd still be working. I probably wouldn't be doing this. Well, I wouldn't be doing this. Mm-hmm. And, I think that God has meant it for good. And the thing is, what people call evil, it's all relative. You have to take it from, it's just like my brother Jeffrey. God, I'm going to try to say it like you, Jeffrey. God is sovereign.
Yeah, he is. That's right.
And he is because, and so the thing is to take it from his perspective, that maybe what you think is evil, hey, maybe you should back up a little bit and wait a while. Mm-hmm. It's certainly not good when little children die and all that kind of stuff. I'm not even going to go there.
Right.
But then again, the same people that get upset about that are not aware of the millions of children that have been killed since 1973.
See, humanity humanity, one of the words that comes up a lot recently, and I would say in the last 30 years, has been really a prominent talking point in social culture, and that is the idea of entitlement. See, here's the problem. Men of this earth believe they are entitled to the life they have. This is the problem. You're not. You are not entitled to anything. You or I are not entitled to anything. And I mean anything, nothing you're entitled to, not even your own life. So if no man is entitled to anything, that includes anyone who is human, whether it is an old man or a lady or a young baby child. Because God is the sovereign one on the throne. He is the one that gives life, and he's the one that takes it, as we're going to hear Job say. And these people need to ask themselves the question, as many of us have to do when we read it in the next couple of verses. We have to ask ourselves, was Job correct? God can do, see, the thing about it is we don't understand the concept of what being a creature really is. It is being a creature means, and I hate to say it, but it means we were created. This is what men don't understand. We were created for God's use. He can do whatever he pleases with our lives. I can lose my sight tonight. I can lose my ability to walk tonight. I can lose my ability to eat food through normal means. God can do whatever he wants. We are his possessions. I'm telling you, this is what is lacking in Christian preaching today. And this is why men are not afraid to reject Christ. They're not afraid, because you have these Christians running around saying, God loves you, has a wonderful plan for your life, and he's not all that bad of a guy. He's fair when you let him be. So these preachers that sit in these pulpits and tell these lies, and worse, they withhold the truth. And they believe that they are being brilliant in what they are saying. They think that they are representing God correctly when they are not. They're representing a benevolent being